The rain hammered against the diner's windows as Kendra Mitchell watched the man across the room, the same man who'd ordered nothing but eggs and toast for weeks, calmly break a grown man's wrist with one hand. The sound echoed through Peterson's diner like a gunshot, and Chad Thornton's screams died in his throat when those cold, dark eyes turned on him. This wasn't the quiet construction worker she'd been serving. This was something else entirely. Something dangerous. "You will apologize to her," the man said in that smooth, accented voice, and Kendra's heart slammed against her ribs. Not from fear, from something far more terrifying. Recognition. This was the moment everything changed, when the humble stranger became Shin Woo-jin, one of the most dangerous men in Seattle's underworld, and somehow impossibly, he was protecting her. But this story didn't start with violence. It started 3 weeks earlier, with kindness, cheap eggs, and a lie that would unravel both their worlds. The September rain fell in sheets across Seattle's central district, turning the streets into mirrors that reflected the gray sky above. Kendra Mitchell pulled her jacket tighter as she hurried toward Peterson's diner, her sneakers splashing through puddles that had formed in the cracked sidewalk. She was already 10 minutes late for her shift, and Donald Peterson didn't appreciate tardiness, even when the bus ran behind schedule. "Sorry, Mr. Peterson," she called out as she pushed through the glass door, the little bell chiming overhead. The familiar smell of coffee and bacon grease wrapped around her like a warm blanket, chasing away the chill from the rain. Donald Peterson looked up from behind the counter, his weathered brown face creasing into what might have been a smile on someone more expressive. At 72, he'd been running this diner for 40 years, and his tolerance for excuses had worn thin somewhere around 1995. "Bus again?" he asked, already knowing the answer. "Bus again," Kendra confirmed, shrugging out of her wet jacket and grabbing her apron from the hook. "I swear, Metro is testing my faith in public transportation." "Then buy a car," Peterson grumbled, but there was no real heat in it. He'd been suggesting the same thing for 3 years, and they both knew why she couldn't. The medical bills from her mother's cancer treatment didn't leave room for luxuries like reliable transportation. Kendra tied her apron and pulled her natural hair back into a neat bun, checking her reflection in the stainless steel napkin dispenser. Her rich brown skin glowed under the diner's fluorescent lights, and despite the exhaustion that lived permanently in her bones these days, her dark eyes still held warmth. She'd learned early that a genuine smile could turn a $2 tip into $5, and $5 meant the difference between eating lunch and skipping it. "Table 6 just sat down," Peterson said, nodding toward the window booth. "Coffee and menus." Kendra grabbed the coffee pot and turned toward table 6, her professional smile already in place. Then she saw him, and something made her pause. The man sat alone in the booth, staring out at the rain-soaked street with an expression that seemed carved from stone. He wore a faded denim jacket over a plain grey t-shirt, work boots that had seen better days, and jeans with actual dirt on the knees. His black hair was slightly too long, falling into his eyes, and he needed a shave. Everything about him screamed construction worker or laborer, someone who worked with his hands and didn't have much left at the end of the week. But his hands. Kendra noticed his hands as she approached, coffee pot in one hand and menu in the other. They rested on the table, perfectly still, perfectly controlled. No calluses, no scars from manual labor. The nails were clean, manicured even. These weren't the hands of someone who swung a hammer for a living. "Good morning," she said, setting the menu down and filling his coffee cup without asking. Everyone wanted coffee on a day like this. "Cream and sugar are on the table. Can I get you started with anything, or do you need a minute?" He looked up at her, and Kendra felt the full weight of his gaze. His eyes were dark, almost black, and intensely focused in a way that made her feel like he was cataloguing every detail of her face. Korean, she thought, noting the sharp lines of his jaw and the slight epicanthic fold of his eyelids. "What's the cheapest thing on the menu?" he asked, his voice low and smooth, with an accent that confirmed her guess about his heritage. Kendra blinked, surprised by the question. Most people asked what was good or what she recommended, or just ordered what they wanted. Nobody asked what was cheapest unless they were counting every dollar. She knew that feeling intimately. "The breakfast special," she said, her voice softening with understanding. "2 eggs any style, toast and coffee, $4.99. He nodded once, still watching her with that unsettling intensity. "Scrambled eggs. Wheat toast." "You got it." She scribbled the order on her pad, then hesitated. Something about him, maybe the way he sat so still, or the slight tension in his shoulders, made her add, "And I'll make sure they give you extra hash browns. On the house." For the first time, something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or confusion. Why? Kendra shrugged, offering him a genuine smile. You look like you've had a long morning. We all need a little extra sometimes. She walked away before he could respond, but she felt his eyes following her across the diner. It wasn't the usual male attention she got, not that appraising look that made her skin crawl. This was different, more curious, more confused. Who's the new guy? Jasmine asked when Kendra reached the counter. Her best friend and fellow waitress leaned against the register, her box braids pulled into a high ponytail that swung when she moved. Jazz had been working at Peterson's almost as long as Kendra, and she noticed everything. Don't know, Kendra said, clipping the order ticket to the wheel for Marcus, their cook. Ordered the cheapest thing on the menu. Jazz glanced over at table 6, her dark eyes narrowing. Those aren't working man's hands. I noticed. So what's his story? Not our business, Kendra said, but she was curious too. There was something about him that didn't add up. The cheap clothes and cheaper order, but that expensive watch barely visible under his sleeve. The humble posture, but the way he held himself suggested someone used to being in control. Throughout the morning rush, she found herself glancing his way. He ate slowly, methodically, like someone who'd been taught that food was fuel and nothing more. He didn't pull out a phone or newspaper. He just sat, watching the rain and the street beyond, occasionally sipping his coffee. When she brought his check, he paid with exact change from a worn wallet, leaving a $5 tip on a $5 meal. Thank you, he said, meeting her eyes again with that penetrating stare. For the extra hash browns. Any time, Kendra said, and meant it. He stood, and she realized he was taller than she'd thought, easily 6 feet with broad shoulders that his shabby jacket couldn't quite hide. He moved with a fluid grace that reminded her of dancers or martial artists, each step precise and controlled. At the door he paused and looked back at her. Their eyes met across the crowded diner, and Kendra felt something shift in her chest. Then he was gone, disappearing into the rain like he'd never been there at all. Girl, Jazz said, appearing at her elbow with a knowing look, that man is trouble. What makes you say that? Because men who look like that, who watch like that, they're either cops or criminals. Jazz picked up his tip and tucked it into Kendra's apron pocket. And cops don't tip that good. Kendra laughed, but the sound felt forced, because Jazz was right. There was something about him, something that whispered danger and secrets and complications she definitely didn't need in her life. But 2 days later, he came back. Same table, same cheap order, same $5 tip that made no mathematical sense for someone supposedly counting pennies. Scrambled eggs, wheat toast, Kendra said when she approached, not bothering with the menu this time. The corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. You remember? I remember all my regulars, she said, which was true, but not the whole truth. She remembered him because he was impossible to forget. Extra hash browns? Please. This time, when she brought his food, he spoke before she could walk away. What's your name? Kendra hesitated. Peterson's had a strict policy about fraternizing with customers, and she couldn't afford to lose this job. But there was something in his voice, genuine curiosity, not creepy interest, that made her answer. Kendra. Kendra, he repeated, like he was testing how it felt in his mouth. I'm Woo Jin. Nice to meet you, Woo Jin. She offered her hand, and he took it carefully, his grip firm but gentle. His hand was cool and smooth, and that spark of electricity she'd felt the first time their eyes met intensified into something undeniable. She pulled her hand back quickly, her heart doing something stupid in her chest. She gestured vaguely toward the other tables. Let me know if you need anything else. Kendra, he said again, and she paused. Thank you for treating me like a person. The words were strange, weighted with meaning she couldn't quite pass, but they settled somewhere deep in her chest, in that place where she kept all the little kindnesses that got her through the hard days. Everyone deserves that, she said simply. His eyes darkened with something intense and unreadable. Then he nodded once and returned to his breakfast, and Kendra walked away feeling like something important had just happened, even if she couldn't name what it was. After that, Woo Jin came in 3 times a week, always the same order, always the same table, always that generous tip that made Jazz raise her eyebrows and Peterson grunt something about fool and his money. But Kendra noticed other things too, the way other customers seemed to give his table a wide berth, even though he never did anything threatening, the way he watched the door whenever it opened, his body tensing almost imperceptibly, the way his eyes tracked every person who came too close to her, and she noticed how he looked at her, like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve, a question he didn't know how to ask. 3 weeks after their first meeting, Chad Thornton walked into Peterson's diner on a grey Tuesday afternoon, already half drunk and looking for trouble. He was a regular of the worst kind, the kind who snapped his fingers at waitresses and complained about everything, and left pocket change as a tip after running them ragged. Kendra saw him come in and suppressed a groan. Jazz shot her a sympathetic look from across the diner. "Your turn," Peterson said from behind the counter. "I had him last week." Kendra grabbed a menu and plastered on her customer service smile, the one that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Afternoon, Mr. Thornton." "Your usual table?" "Wherever," he said, barely looking at her as he stumbled toward a booth. "Not table 6. Wu Jin was there, as he had been every Tuesday for the past 3 weeks, quietly eating his cheap eggs and watching the rain. Kendra seated Chad, took his order, club sandwich, fries and another beer even though he clearly didn't need it, and tried to avoid him as much as possible while still doing her job. But Chad was in a mood today. When she brought his food, he grabbed her wrist. "This sandwich is cold," he slurred, even though steam was still rising from the bread. "I just brought it from the kitchen," Kendra said evenly, trying to pull her wrist free without making a scene. "It's fresh and hot." "Don't talk back to me," Chad said, his grip tightening. "You people need to learn some respect." The temperature in the diner dropped 10 degrees. Kendra felt it before she saw it, that sudden shift in atmosphere that made the hair on her arms stand up. She looked toward table 6 and found Wu Jin standing, his cheap meal forgotten, his entire body radiating a cold fury that transformed him from shabby laborer into something infinitely more dangerous. He crossed the diner in 4 strides, moving with that predatory grace she'd noticed before, but never fully understood until now. By the time Chad looked up, Wu Jin was already there, and his hand, those smooth, uncalloused hands, wrapped around Chad's wrist with surgical precision. "Let her go," Wu Jin said quietly. His voice held no anger, no heat. It was as cold and inevitable as winter, and somehow that made it more terrifying than any shout could have been. Chad, drunk and stupid, tried to jerk away. "Who the hell do you think—" The snap of breaking bone cut him off mid-sentence. The sound echoed through Peterson's diner like a thunderclap, and for one frozen moment, everyone stopped breathing. Chad Thornton's face went white, then red, then white again as his brain tried to process the fact that his wrist was bent at an angle wrists should never bend. Then he screamed. Wu Jin released him without ceremony, letting Chad cradle his broken wrist against his chest as he stumbled backward. Those dark eyes, eyes that had always watched Kendra with such careful curiosity, now held nothing but ice. "For you will apologize to her," Wu Jin said, his accented voice cutting through Chad's whimpers like a blade. You broke my fucking wrist," Chad gasped, tears streaming down his florid face. "I will break the other one if you don't apologize." It wasn't a threat. It was a statement of fact, delivered with the calm certainty of someone who'd done far worse, and lost no sleep over it. "I'm sorry," Chad practically sobbed, looking at Kendra with wild eyes. "I'm sorry, okay? Jesus Christ, I'm sorry." Wu Jin's gaze never wavered from Chad's face. "Leave. If I see you near her again, they will need to identify you by your dental records." The specificity of the threat made it worse somehow. Chad scrambled for the door, still cradling his wrist, and stumbled out into the rain. The diner remained silent. Even Marcus had emerged from the kitchen, his spatula still in hand, staring at Wu Jin with something between awe and terror. Slowly, Wu Jin turned to face Kendra, the cold fury drained from his expression, replaced by something almost vulnerable. Concern. "Did he hurt you?" Kendra looked down at her wrist. There were red marks where Chad had grabbed her, but nothing serious, nothing that wouldn't fade in an hour. "I'm fine," she said, and was surprised to find her voice steady. "You didn't have to—" "Yes," Wu Jin interrupted softly. "I did." The way he said it, with such quiet conviction, made something flutter in Kendra's chest. No one had protected her like that since her mother died. "You should sit down," Jazz said, appearing at Kendra's elbow with a chair. Her best friend's eyes were wide, but her hands were gentle as she guided Kendra into the seat. "Mr. Peterson, get her some water." "I'm calling the police," Peterson announced, reaching for the phone behind the counter. "No," Kendra said quickly. She didn't know why. Maybe because Wu Jin had been defending her, or maybe because some instinct whispered that involving the police would make everything worse, but the word came out sharp and certain. "No police." Peterson frowned at her. "That man assaulted a customer. That man assaulted me first," Kendra countered. Wu Jin was defending me. It was a flimsy argument, and they all knew it. But Peterson had known Kendra since she was 16, had watched her work 2 jobs to pay for her mother's treatment, had seen her show up every single day even when grief threatened to drown her. He trusted her judgment. Fine, he said after a long moment. No police, but you, he pointed at Wu Jin. You're banned. I don't need that kind of trouble in my diner. Something flickered across Wu Jin's face. Disappointment, maybe, or resignation. He nodded once, then reached into his wallet and pulled out several $20 bills, setting them on table 6. For the meal I didn't finish, he said, and for any damages. He moved toward the door, but Kendra found herself standing, her hand reaching out before her brain could catch up. Wait! Wu Jin paused, his hand on the door handle. Can I? Kendra hesitated. Can I talk to you? Outside? Jazz made a small noise of protest, but Kendra ignored her. She grabbed her jacket from the hook and followed Wu Jin out into the rain. The alley beside Peterson's diner provided some shelter from the downpour. Wu Jin stood with his back to the brick wall, watching her with that intense focus she'd grown accustomed to. Who are you? Kendra asked bluntly. And don't say you're a construction worker, because we both know that's bullshit. The corner of his mouth twitched, that almost smile she'd seen a few times. Perceptive. Those hands. She gestured to where they hung loosely at his sides. Those aren't working man's hands. That watch costs more than I make in 6 months. And the way you just broke Chad's wrist. She shuddered. That wasn't a bar fight move. That was training. Wu Jin was silent for a long moment, rain dripping from his hair. When he finally spoke, his voice was careful. If I tell you the truth, you'll be afraid of me. I'm not afraid of you, Kendra said, and realized it was true. You've protected me. Whatever else you are, you did that. He studied her face like he was searching for the lie, the fear she must be hiding. When he didn't find it, something in his expression softened. My name is Shin Wu Jin, he said. I'm the head of the Sangyongpa, the Korean organized crime syndicate that controls most of the import-export business on Seattle's waterfront. The words hung in the rain-soaked air between them. Kendra's brain stuttered, trying to reconcile the man who'd tipped generously on cheap eggs with the confession he'd just made. You're a gangster, she said slowly. The American term is typically crime boss, Wu Jin corrected with that tiny, almost smile. But yes, I'm a criminal. And you've been coming to Peterson's for 3 weeks, eating $4 eggs, and pretending to be broke. Kendra shook her head. Why? The almost smile faded, replaced by something more vulnerable. Because I wanted to know what it felt like, he said quietly. To be treated like a person instead of a position. To have someone look at me and see, just a man. The raw honesty in his voice hit Kendra like a physical blow. She thought about the past 3 weeks, about how she'd served him with the same cheerful efficiency she gave everyone, how she'd added extra hash browns because he looked tired, how she'd remembered his order and his name and treated him with simple, uncomplicated kindness. She'd seen just a man, and apparently that had mattered. So you lied, she said, but there was no heat in it. I am who I am, Wu Jin said, taking a step closer. But I'm also the man who likes scrambled eggs and wheat toast, who finds your smile the best part of his Tuesday mornings, who thinks your kindness is the most valuable thing he's encountered in a decade of acquiring valuable things. Kendra's breath caught. The rain continued to fall around them, cold and relentless, but she felt warm. This is crazy, she whispered. I don't even know you. You know the parts that matter, Wu Jin said. The parts I don't show anyone else. He reached out slowly and brushed his thumb across her wrist where Chad had grabbed her. His touch was feather-light, reverent almost, and Kendra shivered. I scared you, he said, not quite a question. No, Kendra admitted. How you scared me before when you were just the weird guy who tipped too much. Now I know why, and that's actually less scary somehow. His lips quirked into what might have been an actual smile. Only you would think that. What does that mean? Most people hear what I am and they run, or they see an opportunity to exploit. But you, he shook his head, something like wonder in his dark eyes. You think it's less scary when you understand it. I'm not normal, Kendra said. Then, because she was apparently incapable of self-preservation today, she added, and for the record, I don't want to exploit you. I don't want anything from you. I know, Wu Jin said, and the certainty in his voice made her chest tighten. That's why I keep coming back. They stood in the rain-soaked alley, and Kendra made a decision that would change everything. You're banned from the diner, she said. Peterson meant it. Wu Jin nodded, acceptance in the line of his shoulders. But, Kendra continued, pulling out her phone, That doesn't mean we can't get coffee sometime, somewhere that isn't Peterson's. She watched emotions flicker across his face, surprise, hope, something darker and more complicated. Then he pulled out his own phone. They exchanged numbers in silence, rain pattering on the screen as they typed. "Kendra," he said when they were done, "you should know that being associated with me is dangerous. There are people who would hurt you to get to me." "Is that why you broke Chad's wrist so dramatically?" she asked. "To scare off anyone who might hurt me?" "Partially," he admitted, "and partially because I haven't wanted to hurt someone that badly in a very long time." The honesty should have terrified her. Instead, it made that warm feeling in her chest grow hotter. "I'll take my chances," she said, and meant it. 2 weeks after the incident at Peterson's, Kendra found herself standing outside a coffee shop in Capitol Hill, wondering if she'd lost her mind. The rain had finally cleared, giving way to one of those rare Seattle afternoons where the sun actually made an appearance. Her phone buzzed. "Woo Jin, I'm at a table by the window, take your time." Kendra took a deep breath and pushed through the door. Woo Jin sat at a corner table, and Kendra's breath caught. Gone was the shabby construction worker. This version of Shin Woo Jin wore charcoal slacks and a black button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms that were definitely not built for pushing papers. His hair was styled back from his face and he'd shaved, revealing the sharp line of his jaw. He looked expensive, he looked dangerous. He looked like exactly who he'd told her he was. "Hi," Kendra said when she reached the table, suddenly very aware of her Target jeans and second-hand sweater. "Hi," Woo Jin replied, standing. "You look beautiful." "I look like I always look," Kendra said, but she felt her cheeks warm anyway. "I know." His eyes held that intensity she'd come to recognize. "That's what I said." Damn it. How was she supposed to maintain any kind of emotional distance when he said things like that? "I'll get coffee," she said, needing a moment to collect herself. "Already ordered." He gestured to 2 cups on the table. "Caramel latte with an extra shot. That's what you always got at Peterson's on your breaks." He'd noticed. Of course he'd noticed. Kendra sat down and wrapped her hands around the warm cup. "So, crime boss, that's a real thing you do?" "Every day," Woo Jin confirmed, a hint of amusement in his voice. "What does that actually mean, like day to day?" He considered the question. "I oversee import-export operations through the Port of Seattle, legitimate businesses that also facilitate less legitimate enterprises. I mediate disputes between different organizations. I make decisions about territory and resource allocation. I ensure that people who work for me are compensated and protected." "You make it sound like middle management," Kendra said. "In some ways it is." He took a sip of his coffee, black, no sugar. "Except the consequences for mistakes are more permanent." "You mean people die?" "Sometimes." He met her eyes without flinching. "I won't lie to you about what I am, Kendra. I've killed people. I've ordered people killed. I've done things that would make you look at me differently." Kendra should have been horrified, should have stood up and walked out. Instead, she asked, "Why did you tell me the truth? You could have kept lying." "Because you treated a broke construction worker with more kindness than most people show me when they know I have power," Woo Jin said simply. "That meant something, and I wanted at least one person to know the real me, all of me, and still choose to sit across from me and drink coffee. That's manipulative as hell," Kendra said, but without heat. "Telling me something that heavy and then framing it as me choosing you." "Yes," Woo Jin agreed. "It is. I'm not a good man, Kendra. I won't pretend to be." "But you protected me," she said. "You've been kind to me. You tip Jazz 20%. You say thank you to the busboy. I watched you for 3 weeks, and you were never anything but respectful." "That's not the same as being good." "Maybe not," Kendra said, "but it's not nothing either." They sat in silence for a moment, the sounds of the coffee shop washing over them. "Tell me about your mother," Woo Jin said suddenly. The change of subject startled her. "What? You work 2 jobs, you're always tired, you count every dollar." His voice was gentle. "But you give away food to homeless people when your boss isn't looking. Someone taught you that kind of generosity." "I'm guessing it was your mother." Kendra's throat tightened. Nobody ever asked about her mom. "She was a hospice nurse," Kendra said quietly. "She spent her whole career taking care of people at the end of their lives, making sure they were comfortable and dignified and not alone." She traced the edge of her coffee cup. "She used to say that how we treat people when they can't do anything for us, that's who we really are." "Wise woman," Woo Jin said. "She was." Kendra blinked back tears. "Cancer got her anyway. Pancreatic. By the time they found it, there was nothing to do but make her comfortable. Ironic, right?" You were with her, Wu Jin said. Not a question. Every day. I held her hand when she died. Kendra wiped at her eyes. And then I got stuck with $70,000 in medical bills because apparently dying in America is expensive as hell. That's why you work 2 jobs. That's why I'll be working 2 jobs for the next 5 years, Kendra corrected. Wu Jin was quiet for a long moment. I could pay that off today, 1 phone call. No, Kendra said immediately. Why not? Because that's not what this is. I'm not with you for your money. You're not with me at all, Wu Jin pointed out. We're having coffee. You know what I mean. He smiled then, a real smile that transformed his entire face. I do, and that's why I want to pay it off. Not as payment for your time or affection, but because I can, and you deserve to breathe without that weight. Wu Jin, think about it, he said. No pressure, no expectations, just an offer from someone who has more money than he knows what to do with, and would like to see you smile without shadows in your eyes. Her phone rang, shattering the moment. Jazz's name flashed on the screen. Sorry, Kendra said, answering. Hey, where are you? Jazz's voice was sharp with fear. Kendra, where are you right now? Capitol Hill. Having coffee. Why? Because there are men at your apartment. They're asking about you, and they don't look friendly. Ice flooded Kendra's veins. What men? I don't know, but they're driving a black SUV with tinted windows, and one of them has a Russian accent. And Kendra, I think you need to call the police. Wu Jin was already standing, his phone to his ear, his entire demeanor shifting. Where? He demanded into the phone. A pause. Central District near Jefferson Park. Send everyone. Now. He looked at Kendra, and she saw something terrible in his eyes. We need to go. Now. What's happening? Wu Jin pushed through the door, scanning the street. A sleek black car pulled up immediately, one that had been waiting, following him, protecting him. Viktor Volkov, Wu Jin said grimly. The Russian syndicate has been pushing into our territory for months. He must have found out about you. Found out? What about me? Wu Jin pulled open the door and practically shoved her inside. Found out that you matter to me, he said, and in my world that makes you a target. The drive to Kendra's apartment took 12 minutes that felt like 12 hours. Wu Jin sat beside her in the back of the car, his phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Korean. His free hand rested on his knee, perfectly still, but Kendra could see the tension in every line of his body. Daejung is already there, Wu Jin said when he ended the call, finally looking at her. My head of security. He'll make sure your friend is safe. This is my fault, Kendra said. I shouldn't have... Don't, Wu Jin interrupted sharply. This is Victor's fault for being a coward who targets innocent people, and it's my fault for not anticipating it sooner. His jaw clenched. I knew better. I knew the risks, and I was selfish anyway. They pulled up to her apartment building. The black SUV Jazz had mentioned was parked out front, but it was surrounded by 3 other cars. Men in dark suits stood in a loose perimeter, and Kendra recognized the same cold professionalism in their bearing that she'd seen in Wu Jin. Stay in the car, Wu Jin ordered. Like hell, Kendra shot back, grabbing his arm. That's my apartment. My friend. I'm not hiding. He looked at her hand on his arm, then up at her face. Something flickered in his eyes. Respect, maybe, or resignation. You don't take orders well. I've been taking orders my whole life, Kendra said. I'm tired of it. If I let you come, you do exactly what I say. No arguments. His voice dropped to something dangerous. Because if something happens to you, I will burn this city to the ground. Do you understand? The raw intensity in his voice should have scared her. Instead, it made something fierce bloom in her chest. I understand, she said. They got out together. Immediately, one of the suited men approached. Korean, like Wu Jin, but older and broader, with scars on his knuckles. Boss, he said in English, nodding respectfully. Then to Kendra, Ma'am, your friend is inside, shaken but unhurt. The Russians? Wu Jin asked. Gone by the time we arrived, but they left a message. Daejung held out his phone. Kendra looked at the screen and felt her stomach turn. It was a photo of her building, time-stamped from 20 minutes ago, written across it in Russian and English. We know where she lives. Fucking cowards, Wu Jin said softly, but his voice carried enough venom to kill, threatening women instead of facing me directly. It's effective, though, Daejung said pragmatically. Gets your attention faster than any territorial dispute. Oh, they have my attention now. Wu Jin's smile was a terrible thing. Send word to Victor. He wants a meeting? He gets a meeting. Tomorrow. Neutral ground. And tell him if he touches her again, I'll make sure his organization remembers him as the man who brought them all down. Dae-jung nodded and stepped away. Woo-jin turned to Kendra. You can't stay here. Not tonight. Probably not for a while. I can't just leave, Kendra protested. I have work tomorrow. I have bills. You'll have work tomorrow, Woo-jin said. Just from a different address. And your bills will be handled. I told you I don't want your money. This isn't about money. The sharpness in his voice cut through her protests. This is about keeping you alive. Do you think Victor will stop with threats? He'll take you. He'll hurt you. And he'll make sure I know exactly how much pain you're in before he finally kills you. The blunt cruelty of his words hit like a slap. Kendra had known, abstractly, that Woo-jin lived in a dangerous world, but hearing it laid out so starkly made it viscerally real. I'm scared, she admitted in a whisper. Woo-jin's expression softened immediately. He reached out and cupped her face in his hands. I know. I'm sorry. I never wanted this for you. Then why did you keep coming back? The question came out more accusatory than she'd intended. If you knew this could happen, why did you let me get close? Because I'm selfish, Woo-jin said simply. Because for the first time in 10 years, someone looked at me and saw a person worth knowing. And I couldn't walk away from that. From you. Kendra closed her eyes, feeling tears slip down her cheeks. His thumbs brushed them away with devastating tenderness. I'll protect you, he promised. Whatever it takes. However long it takes. You're mine now, and I protect what's mine. The possessiveness should have bothered her, but standing there with his hands on her face and his dark eyes blazing with fierce devotion, all she felt was safe. Okay, she whispered. Okay. They went inside to get Jazz, who nearly tackled Kendra with a hug. Girl, what have you gotten yourself into? Jazz demanded. Then she saw Woo-jin standing in the doorway and her eyes widened. Oh, that's what you've gotten into. Jazz, this is Woo-jin. Woo-jin, this is my best friend Jasmine. The crime boss, Jazz said flatly. The one you've been having coffee with. We're not dating, Kendra started. You're about to move in with him because Russian gangsters are threatening you, Jazz interrupted. That's past dating. Despite everything, Kendra laughed. Woo-jin stepped forward. Ms. Brooks, I apologize for the danger I've brought to Kendra's door. I take full responsibility and I give you my word that I will keep her safe. Jazz looked him up and down. You better, because if anything happens to her, I know where you eat breakfast. Not anymore, Woo-jin said with a hint of a smile. I'm banned from Peterson's, remember? We'll make an exception for funerals, Jazz said sweetly. Then she turned to Kendra and lowered her voice. You sure about this? Kendra looked at Woo-jin, at the man who'd lied about who he was, but never about how he felt, who'd protected her without hesitation, who looked at her like she was precious. Yeah, Kendra said. I'm sure. Woo-jin's penthouse was everything Kendra expected. Glass towers downtown, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay and the Olympic Mountains, modern furniture, clean lines, expensive materials, everything meticulously organized. It looked like a very wealthy person lived here. It didn't look like a home. Guest room is down the hall, Woo-jin said, setting down her hastily packed bag. Private bathroom, take whatever you need from the kitchen. Woo-jin, Kendra interrupted. Stop. He paused and looked at her. I'm not a guest you're entertaining, she said gently. We're two people trying to figure out a really complicated situation, so maybe we could just sit down and talk about it. After a moment, he nodded. They settled on the couch and for a minute, neither spoke. I've been thinking, Kendra finally said, about what you said in the alley, about wanting someone to see you as just a man. Kendra, let me finish. She turned to face him. I did see you that way, but now I know the truth and I still see you, just with more context. You're still the guy who tips too much and remembers my coffee order. You're also the guy who broke Chad's wrist and runs a crime syndicate. Both things can be true. Most people can't reconcile those contradictions, Woo-jin said quietly. I'm not most people. She reached out and took his hand. But I need you to be honest with me. About everything. No more lies. I can do that, Woo-jin said. What do you want to know? Everything, Kendra said. So he told her. About growing up in Busan in a family connected to the Korean mob, about his father's assassination when Woo-jin was 19, and how he'd been forced to take control. About coming to America to expand operations, starting with Seattle's port. He told her about the legitimate businesses they ran. Restaurants, shipping companies, real estate, and about the illegitimate ones, protection, gambling, occasional smuggling. I don't deal drugs, Woo-jin said firmly. And I don't allow trafficking of any kind. Those are hard lines. Because you have principles, Kendra asked. Because I'm not a monster, he corrected. I'm a criminal. There's a difference. Kendra thought about that, about the moral lines people drew and how they justified crossing some but not others. Tell me about Victor, she said. Wu Jin's expression darkened. Viktor Volkov is the heir to a Russian crime family that's been trying to muscle into Seattle for the past 2 years. They want our port access, our networks, our territories. We've been in a Cold War, posturing and threats, but no direct violence. Until now. Until me, Kendra said. Until you. Wu Jin agreed. He must have had someone following me. Found out about Peterson's. About you. His jaw clenched. I should have been more careful. Or, Kendra said, you could have not lied in the first place. It was harsh, but fair. Wu Jin acknowledged it with a nod. You're right. If I'd been honest from the start, this might have played out differently. He turned his hand in hers, lacing their fingers together. But I don't regret the time I had. Those mornings at Peterson's, they were the most honest I've been in years. Even though it was all based on a lie, the feelings were real, Wu Jin said. Everything else was just context. Kendra wanted to argue, but she couldn't, because she understood. The connection between them, that had been real from the first moment. What happens tomorrow? She asked. At this meeting with Victor? I make it clear that you're under my protection, Wu Jin said, and that any further aggression toward you will be considered an act of war. Victor's smart enough to back down when he knows he's outmatched. And if he's not? Wu Jin's smile was sharp and cold. Then he'll learn why people call me the Ghost. The casual certainty with which he promised violence should have disturbed her. Instead, Kendra felt something fierce rise in her chest. Thank you, she said quietly, for protecting me, for being honest, for seeing me too. Kendra, Wu Jin said, and the way he said her name felt like a caress. I will always see you. You're impossible to look away from. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull back. But Kendra didn't pull back. She met him halfway, and when their lips touched, the world narrowed to just this moment. The kiss was gentle at first, questioning. Then Wu Jin's hand came up to cup the back of her neck, and Kendra gasped against his mouth, and suddenly it was desperate and hungry. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Wu Jin rested his forehead against hers. Stay with me, he whispered. Not in the guest room. Here? With me? Kendra knew she should say no, should take things slow, be smart, protect her heart. Instead, she said, okay, and she let him lead her to his bedroom, where they spent the night learning each other with desperate tenderness, as if they could memorize everything before morning came and reality returned. The meeting with Viktor Volkov took place in a warehouse near the port of Seattle, neutral territory, carefully selected to prevent ambushes. Wu Jin had wanted to leave Kendra at the penthouse. She'd refused. If this is about me, she'd argued, then I should be there. You're not a bargaining chip, Wu Jin had said sharply. You're a person, my person. I'm not asking you to use me, Kendra had countered. I'm asking you to let me have a voice in what happens to my own life. They'd stared at each other across his kitchen, wills clashing. Finally, Wu Jin had given in. You don't take orders well, he'd repeated. No, Kendra had agreed. I really don't. Now she stood slightly behind Wu Jin in the warehouse, watching as Viktor Volkov and his entourage entered. The Russian crime boss was exactly what Kendra had expected, thick-necked and heavy-browed, with dead eyes and a smile that held no warmth. Shin Wu Jin, Viktor said in heavily accented English. I hear you wanted to meet. You threatened someone under my protection, Wu Jin said without preamble. That requires a response. The waitress? Victor's gaze slid to Kendra, and she forced herself not to flinch. I merely wanted to understand why the ghost of Seattle spends his time in cheap diners. Imagine my surprise to discover it's for a woman. Imagine my surprise, Wu Jin said coldly, to discover that Viktor Volkov hides behind threats to civilians instead of conducting business like a professional. Victor's expression darkened. Be careful, Korean. Your reputation doesn't make you untouchable. No, Wu Jin agreed. But my resources do. You want a war, Victor? I'll give you one. But it won't end well for you. I control the docks. I control the distribution networks. I have alliances with every major organization on the West Coast. What do you have? A handful of soldiers and delusions of adequacy. The warehouse went silent. Kendra could feel the tension ratcheting up. You think you can threaten me? Victor said, his voice dangerously soft. I think I can destroy you, Wu Jin corrected, but I'd prefer not to. War is expensive and draws attention neither of us wants. So I'm going to make this simple. You leave Seattle. You leave my territories. You leave her, he gestured to Kendra, completely alone. And in exchange, I'll let you walk out of here alive. And if I refuse? Wu Jin smiled, and it was the coldest thing Kendra had ever seen. Then tomorrow morning the FBI will receive an anonymous tip about your operations in Portland. By noon the IRS will be auditing every business you own. By evening, I'll have made it known that you're a liability, that anyone associated with you will become a target. By midnight, your own people will be looking for ways to buy my favor by eliminating you. The specificity of the threats was chilling. This wasn't bluster. This was a man who'd mapped out exactly how to dismantle someone's life. Victor stared at him for a long moment. Then he looked at Kendra, and she saw something like pity in his dead eyes. You chose poorly, Waitress, he said. This man will destroy you too. Maybe not today, but eventually. That's her choice to make, Wu Jin said before Kendra could respond. Not yours, not mine. Hers. And she's chosen to stand here, knowing exactly what I am. That's more faith than you've ever earned from anyone. Something shifted in Victor's expression. Not defeat exactly, but recognition. He nodded slowly. Seattle is yours, he said, but someday, Shin Wu Jin, someone will find your weakness. And when they do, you'll understand why men like us don't get to have what we want. I already understand, Wu Jin said quietly. That's why I'm willing to burn everything down to protect it. Victor left without another word. The warehouse doors clanged shut, and suddenly, Kendra could breathe again. Is it over? She asked. For now, Wu Jin said. He turned to face her, and the cold fury melted away. Are you all right? I'm fine. You were... Kendra shook her head. That was terrifying, and impressive, and kind of hot, if I'm being honest. Wu Jin's lips twitched. You find threats of financial ruin attractive? I find you protecting me attractive, Kendra corrected. Everything about me is morally questionable, Wu Jin pointed out. But he was smiling now, soft and genuine. The next few weeks fell into an unexpected rhythm. Kendra continued working at Peterson's. Donald had lifted Wu Jin's ban, declaring that the diner took care of its own. Wu Jin continued running his empire, but now his mornings included coffee at Kendra's apartment, and his evenings included dinner that she cooked. They learned each other in layers. Kendra discovered that Wu Jin was a terrible cook, but an excellent dishwasher, that he spoke 4 languages but couldn't carry a tune, that he had nightmares about his father's death. Wu Jin learned that Kendra sang while she cooked, that she cried at sappy commercials, that she had a gift for reading people, that her kindness wasn't weakness, but a deliberate choice she made every day. Why aren't you angry? He asked one night, watching her sort through medical bills. About the debt, the job, everything you've lost? Kendra looked up, surprised. I am angry, but anger doesn't pay bills or bring my mom back. So I wake up every day and choose to be kind anyway, because that's what she taught me. That's how I honor her memory. Wu Jin crossed the room and pulled her to her feet, wrapping his arms around her. You're extraordinary, he murmured against her hair, and I don't deserve you. Probably not, Kendra agreed, but you're stuck with me anyway. Good, Wu Jin said, because I'm not letting go. 2 months after the warehouse confrontation, Wu Jin took Kendra to a formal dinner with several of his business associates, a mix of legitimate businessmen and high-level criminals. Kendra wore a dress Wu Jin had insisted on buying her. They'd argued about it for an hour, and she felt wildly out of place among the expensive suits and designer gowns. Relax, Wu Jin murmured as they entered the private dining room at Canlis. You belong here. With me. But Kendra saw the looks, the barely concealed disdain from some, the curiosity from others. Dinner was tense. Conversation flowed in multiple languages, and Kendra found herself struggling to keep up. Your girlfriend is very quiet, one man said in English, his Korean accent thick. He was older than Wu Jin, with grey at his temples. Does she speak? She speaks when she has something worth saying, Wu Jin replied coolly, unlike some people. The man laughed, but it wasn't friendly. I meant no disrespect. I'm simply curious what a woman like her, he gestured vaguely, finds appealing about our world. A woman like me, Kendra repeated, her voice steady despite the anger rising in her chest. You mean black? Or poor? Or working class? Which particular aspect of my existence are you having trouble understanding? The table went silent. The older man's eyes widened slightly. I apologize, he said after a moment, and he sounded sincere. That was poorly phrased. Why? Kendra asked, not backing down. Because you assumed Wu Jin would choose someone from your world? Someone who understands the language and the culture and the codes you all live by. She looked around the table. Maybe that's exactly why he didn't. Maybe he wanted someone who sees him as a person first and a position second. Kendra, Wu Jin said quietly, but she could hear the pride in his voice. No, let her speak, another man said. She has courage. That's rare. She's not a companion, Wu Jin said, and his voice cut through the room like a blade. She's not a girlfriend or an accessory, or a weakness to be exploited. She is the woman I choose, the woman who saw me when I was pretending to be nothing and treated me with more respect than anyone in this room has ever shown me. She is smart and strong and kind, and if any of you have a problem with that, I suggest you examine why my happiness threatens you. He stood, pulling Kendra to her feet. We're leaving, this dinner is over. Wu Jin, the older man said, also standing. Please, we meant no disrespect. Your lady is welcome here. You questioned her worth, Wu Jin said coldly. That's worse. It suggests you think I lack the judgment to recognize value when I see it. He led Kendra toward the door. But before they left, he turned back. Kendra Mitchell saved my life, he said clearly. Not from a bullet or a knife, but from becoming exactly what Victor said I'd become. Someone who destroys everything he touches. She looked at me and saw someone worth knowing. Someone worth coffee and conversation and kindness. That's more powerful than any alliance in this room, and if you can't respect that, then we have nothing more to discuss. They walked out together, leaving stunned silence behind them. In the car ride home, Kendra was quiet. Wu Jin kept glancing at her, concern etched in his eyes. I'm sorry, he finally said. I should have prepared you better. I'm not fragile, Kendra said. I've dealt with racist assholes before. That's not what's bothering me. Then what is? She turned to look at him. You said I saved your life. You did. From what? Wu Jin was quiet for a long moment, the city lights sliding past the car windows. From forgetting I was human, he finally said. From becoming so focused on power and control that I lost sight of why any of it mattered. You reminded me that respect earned through fear isn't the same as respect earned through character. That kindness is a choice, and it's a choice that matters. Kendra felt tears prick her eyes. That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me. It's just the truth, Wu Jin said. He reached over and took her hand. You changed me, Kendra. Made me want to be better. Not perfect, I'll never be that. But better than I was. I like who you are, Kendra said. The guy who breaks wrists when someone threatens me and also remembers my coffee order. Both versions. All versions. Even the version that runs a criminal empire? Even that, she confirmed. Because you're trying to do it with some kind of moral code. You draw lines. You have principles. That matters. They pulled up to her apartment, and Wu Jin walked her to the door like he always did. On her doorstep he pulled her close. I love you, he said, the words simple and devastating. I've never said that to anyone who wasn't family, but I love you, Kendra Mitchell. Your strength, your kindness, your refusal to let me or anyone else diminish who you are. Kendra's breath caught. I love you too, she whispered. My crime boss who orders cheap eggs and protects me like I'm precious. All of you. He kissed her then, deep and thorough, and Kendra felt the last of her reservations crumble. This was her choice. This complicated, dangerous, surprisingly tender man. She chose it. She chose him. And for the first time since her mother's death, Kendra felt like she was exactly where she belonged. 3 months later, Donald Peterson found himself serving a very unusual breakfast. In the main dining room sat Shin Wu Jin, no longer disguised, no longer pretending, eating scrambled eggs and wheat toast while reading the Seattle Times. At the table next to him, Dae Jung and 2 other security personnel maintained watchful silence. At the counter, Kendra poured coffee and chatted with Jazz, both of them laughing. It was strange. It was unconventional. It probably violated several health codes, but it was also somehow exactly right. This is the weirdest thing that's ever happened in this diner, Peterson grumbled to Marcus. Weirder than the time that guy tried to pay for pancakes with Bitcoin, Marcus asked. Weirder than that, Peterson confirmed. But he didn't kick them out, because Kendra was happy, genuinely, radiantly happy, in a way she hadn't been since her mother died. And if that happiness came from a Korean crime boss who tipped too much and looked at her like she hung the moon, well, Peterson had seen worse relationships. At least this one started with kindness, and in Peterson's experience, that mattered more than anything else. The rain had cleared by the time they returned to Peterson's diner, giving way to one of those perfect Seattle afternoons where the sun made everything sparkle. Kendra held Wu Jin's hand as they approached the familiar glass door, the little bell chiming overhead. "Table 6 is available," Donald Peterson called from behind the counter. He was older now, moving a bit slower, but his eyes were sharp. "Your usual." "Please," Wu Jin said, and Kendra bit back a smile. Years had passed, long enough that the novelty had worn off, replaced by something deeper. Long enough that the city's criminal organizations had stopped testing whether Kendra was a weakness and started recognizing her as an asset. Long enough that she'd gone back to school, finished her degree, and started working as a counselor for at-risk youth. Long enough that Wu Jin had slowly, carefully begun transitioning his organization toward legitimate business. It wasn't perfect. There were still aspects of his work that existed in gray areas, but he'd drawn his lines and held them. They slid into table 6, and Kendra looked out at the rain-washed street, remembering the first time she'd seen him sitting here. "What are you thinking about?" Wu Jin asked, his hand finding hers. "How different everything is now," Kendra said. "How we've both changed. For the better?" "Definitely for the better." She squeezed his fingers. "Though I still think you tip too much." "Never," Wu Jin said with that small smile she loved. "You deserved every dollar." Jazz appeared with a coffee pot, her box braids replaced by a natural cut. "The usual. 2 orders of scrambled eggs and an engagement announcement I can finally tell people about." Kendra laughed. "We've been engaged for 6 months, Jazz." "I know," Jazz said, "but I like making you squirm." She poured their coffee and disappeared, leaving them in comfortable silence. Outside, Seattle continued its daily rhythm. "Do you ever regret it?" Wu Jin asked suddenly. "Choosing this life. Choosing me." Kendra considered the question seriously. "I regret that your world brought danger to my door. I regret that I had to learn to always watch my back. I regret that we can't be completely normal." She saw his expression start to close. "But," she continued, squeezing his hand harder, "I don't regret choosing you. Because you chose me first. Remember, you came back day after day because a waitress treated you like you mattered. And then you protected me, respected me, loved me exactly as I am. How could I regret that?" Wu Jin's eyes were suspiciously bright. "You gave me my life back," he said quietly, "the one I didn't know I was missing, the one where I get to be human instead of just powerful." "Well," Kendra said with a grin, "you still get to be powerful. You just have to eat scrambled eggs at a diner while doing it." He laughed, a real laugh, the kind she'd spent months drawing out of him. Their food arrived, delivered by a new waitress. Young, nervous, clearly trying her best. "Wait," Kendra called. The girl turned back, eyes wide. "What's your name?" "Riley," the girl said hesitantly. "It's nice to meet you, Riley. Thank you for the service. You're doing great." The girl's face lit up with a smile that reminded Kendra of herself at that age. "Thank you, ma'am." She disappeared, and Kendra looked up to find Wu Jin watching her with that expression, the one that said he was memorizing this moment. "What?" she asked. "You," he said simply, "still treating everyone with kindness, still seeing people. That hasn't changed." "Some things shouldn't change," Kendra said. She picked up her fork. "These are good. Want to try?" "I have my own," Wu Jin pointed out. "I know, but mine are better. I ordered extra hash browns." He smiled and leaned across the table to steal a bite, and Kendra thought about how far they'd come, when he was pretending to be someone else, and she was just trying to get through another shift, when neither of them knew that a simple act of kindness would spiral into this, into love and partnership and a future that looked nothing like either of them had planned. "I'm glad you ordered the cheapest meal," Kendra said. Wu Jin raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Because if you'd been impressive from the start, if you'd walked in wearing expensive clothes and throwing money around, I probably would have dismissed you as just another rich guy. But you came in humble. You let me see you as human first." She smiled. "That made all the difference." "Korean Mafia boss disguises himself and orders the cheapest meal," Wu Jin quoted with amusement. "And the waitress's reaction wins him over instantly." Jazz said that once. "Said it should be the title of our story." "She's not wrong," Kendra admitted, "though I think the story is less about you disguising yourself and more about both of us learning to see past our assumptions." "Deep," Wu Jin teased. "Have you been reading those self-help books again?" "Shut up and eat your eggs." They finished their meal in comfortable silence. When the check came, Wu Jin pulled out his wallet, expensive now, no pretense, and left a $100 tip on a $12 bill. "Still too much," Kendra said. "Never too much," Wu Jin replied. They stood to leave, and Kendra paused at the door, looking back at table 6. So much had started there. "Ready?" Wu Jin asked, offering his hand. Kendra took it, feeling the solid warmth of his palm against hers. Through the window she could see their future waiting, complicated and imperfect, and absolutely theirs. "Ready," she said. And together they walked out into the Seattle afternoon, leaving the diner behind but carrying its lessons forward. Kindness mattered. People mattered. And sometimes the most powerful thing you could do was see someone, really see them, and choose to treat them like they were worth knowing. That had saved them both, and it would be enough to carry them through whatever came next.